The world is at war. And most people might not know it yet.
The world stands on the edge of a precipice, with more violent conflicts raging today than at any time since World War II.
The year 2023 alone witnessed up to 59 active conflicts, a staggering number that underscores the increasing instability of the world. From the war-torn landscapes of Ukraine and Sudan to the relentless fighting in Gaza and Yemen, the global community is grappling with crises that are not only devastating lives, but also reshaping international relations. But what's driving this surge in violence? How are these conflicts interconnected, and what role does the global war economy play in fueling them? In this episode of HT in Depth, we'll find out. Currently, the world is experiencing up to 56 active violent conflicts, the highest since the end of World War II. These conflicts span multiple continents, with significant crises erupting in Africa, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. The war in Ukraine, ignited by Russia's invasion in 2022, has become one of the most intense and destructive conflicts of our time, with profound global implications. Meanwhile, in Sudan, an internal power struggle has spiraled into a full-blown civil war, displacing millions and leading to catastrophic humanitarian conditions. But these are just two of the many crises. In the Middle East, the long-standing conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza has reached new levels of violence, with deadly clashes also flaring up in the West Bank. In Yemen, the civil war drags on, compounded by regional tensions and a dire humanitarian situation. And in Myanmar, the military junta's brutal crackdown on resistance groups has led to widespread violence, with civilians caught in the crossfire. But what's driving this alarming increase in global conflicts? It's a complex web of political, economic, and social factors, but one key element stands out: the growing involvement of external powers. One of the most significant trends in modern warfare is the internationalization of conflicts. In 2023, a staggering 92 countries were involved in wars outside their borders. Whether through direct military intervention, funding, or arms supply. This international involvement often escalates conflicts, turning local disputes into global crises. Take Ukraine, for example. The war between Ukraine and Russia has drawn in the West, with NATO countries supplying Kiev with weapons, intelligence, and financial aid. This has increased the stakes, as Russia perceives it as a broader confrontation with the West. Similarly, in Yemen, the civil war has been exacerbated by the involvement of regional powers like Saudi Arabia and Iran, each backing different sides in the conflict. This pattern is repeated in conflict zones around the world. External involvement can provide much-needed support to beleaguered factions, but it can also be a tool of destabilization. The human cost of these conflicts is almost unimaginable. Thousands are dead. Millions of people have been displaced from their homes, forced to flee to neighboring countries or live in overcrowded camps. In Ukraine, cities like Mariupol and Bakhmut have been reduced to rubble, with civilians enduring months of relentless bombardment. In Sudan, the conflict has left entire communities without access to food, water, or medical care. In Gaza and the West Bank, families live in constant fear of airstrikes and clashes. The situation in Yemen is even more dire, with the UN describing it as the world's worst humanitarian crisis, where famine and disease are rampant. But it's not just the immediate effects of war that are devastating. The long-term impacts are equally severe. Conflicts disrupt education, destroy healthcare systems, and cripple economies, creating conditions that can take generations to recover from. While people suffer, there is one small group which thrives in situations of extreme conflict: weapons manufacturers. To give you perspective, in 2023, global military spending reached an unprecedented $2.4 trillion, marking the highest level of expenditure in history. This represents a 6.8% increase from the previous year. Driven by rising tensions in Europe, the Middle East and Asia, as per a report by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Of this, U.S. defense budget surged to $877 billion, continuing its position as the world's largest military spender. China's military budget grew by 7.2% in 2023, reaching approximately $293 billion. Despite economic sanctions and the pressures of its war in Ukraine, Russia increased its defense spending to an estimated $97 billion in 2023. European countries, particularly those on NATO's eastern flank, also ramped up their defense budgets. For example, Poland's defense spending saw a dramatic increase of 14% in 2023, reaching $33 billion. As the country sought to strengthen its defenses in response to the war in Ukraine. The increase in military expenditures is not just a reaction to current conflicts, but also a result of a self-perpetuating cycle. As countries invest more in their militaries, the global arms trade flourishes, providing defense contractors with lucrative contracts. In 2023, companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and BAE Systems reported record profits, driven by increased demand for military hardware and technology. These companies, through lobbying and influence in government policies, play a significant role in sustaining high levels of defense spending.
Since the summer up to today, we've announced new contract orders of about 430 million, principally around our 155 ammunition, but also around 30mm and some of our small arms products as well.
The current trend of high spending is not an outlier. During the World Wars, nations dedicated over half of their GDP to military efforts. Similarly, the Cold War saw a major arms race between the US and the Soviet Union. The world is currently facing an unprecedented surge in violent conflicts, with devastating consequences for millions of people. The involvement of multiple countries in these conflicts, the rise of war economies, and the historical patterns of military spending all appear to be contributing to a cycle of violence that seems unbreakable. While many conflicts are intricate in nature, and made even more complicated with the passage of time, there is one factor which can help reduce the severity of some of these and possibly ease the path to resolution, and that is showing the political will to put peace above the profits of war.